Hi everybody, I'm Colleen Friend, and I'm the chair of the Social Work Hall of Distinction. And I've been asked to respond to why do I like coming here. And I like coming here because it's so inspirational. Every year I come, I find it moving. I get re-inspired about why I'm a social worker. And I also think about future generations of social workers and what is yet to come. So I so admire my colleagues' contributions and what they've achieved, and really how important it is to acknowledge this to the community, to California, and to the world.
Well, as a former inductee to the Hall of Fame, I am just honored to be here to join with many of my colleagues and friends in recognizing the contributions of social workers throughout California history. It's just an important time, especially now in our country, to recognize the contributions as change agents that social workers play in our society, and I look forward to hearing all of the wonderful, uplifting stories of our honorees today.
I'm very happy to be here at the California Social Work Hall of Distinction annual event, induction ceremony. This is one of the most fabulous, incredible, just heartfelt events for social work, not just in California, but around the country. And this year's inductees are just stellar. I'll just name a few, but they are just remarkable. Doreen Der, who's worked years in San Francisco Chinatown. Barbara Needell, a data and analytical expert. Benny Parrish, back from the days when social workers stood up for what was right and what was ethical. Ken Nakamura from San Diego, just a fantastic instructor, professor, a wonderful human being. So I encourage everybody, if you ever have a chance to visit the website or actually come to a Hall of Distinction event, please do. This is just an incredible experience you'll never forget.
I think it's really important for social workers to know about each other's accomplishments and to know what's going on in other parts of the state. It's a way in which they come together and get to understand the importance of what social work is and what they do.
We're honoring the social workers who have made fantastic contributions to the people of California, to our profession, to the education of our students, and we want everybody to know about the history, the marvelous history of our profession in this state.
Hello everybody, my name is Colleen Friend, and I'm the chair of the California Social Work Hall of Distinction, and I'm also a professor at Cal State LA, from which I run the California Child Abuse and Family Violence Institute. So I want to welcome you all here today, and as part of my job to welcome you, I like to acknowledge a few people that are in the audience. Sorry, I have to read this to make sure that I catch everybody. But the first persons I would like to acknowledge are the people that have been formally inducted into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction. And so I'd like to acknowledge former Assemblywoman Mariko Amato. Is she here? Where are you? Where are you? Mariko, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you, Mariko. Thanks for being here. Okay. And the other one is Fernando Torres-Gil from UCLA. Fernando Torres-Gil, everybody. And then I'd also like to acknowledge one of my predecessors in this job, the former chair of this group, Ellen Dunbar. She's here too. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. So the next thing on the program is to thank all our sponsors, and I want to say that this year we had a record number of 24 sponsors, and we've never had 24 sponsors before. So thank you very much for the growing constituency, for being a sponsor, because when you sponsor this activity with us, it says you're with us and you're in. So thank you very much. We appreciate all the groups that are coming and saying this is one of the most important events that we sponsor all year. And also, it's important to give a shout out for what we do at the Hall of Distinction, because we have an exercise that a lot of social work students from around the country actually tap into. They're given instructions to find a social worker who's made a difference, who's really been of distinction wherever they practice. And so We have reports every month about how many people access our Hall of Distinction online, and that's a lot of people. So we are really reaching out across the country to students and to future social work students who are also going to make a mark just like the rest of our inductees have. So thank you very much. And so part of being a sponsor is that you get some recognition from the podium. So I'm going to list off all our sponsors, and when I have a representative from that organization or the leadership of that organization here, I will acknowledge the person, but I'll ask you to hold your applause till the very end, although we have several notable people here today. Okay, some by surprise. So first of all, we're going to start off with the California Deans and Directors of Social Work. Thank you for being a sponsor. And then our next one is the California Social Work Education Center, and we have Virginia Renano Hernandez here today as the representative, so thank you for sponsoring. And then we move on to the California State University East Bay Department of Social Work and California State University Fresno Department of Social Work Education. And we have California State University Fullerton Department of Social Work. And our next sponsor is California State University Long Beach School of Social Work. And next we have California State University Los Angeles, which is my school, and Evan Wong Kim, who's here today. Evan, are you here? Where are you? You're here. Okay, she's here. Okay, she is here. And California State University Sacramento Division of Social Work. And California State Stanislaus Social Work Department. And then next we have Central California Social Welfare Evaluation Research and Training Center as a sponsor. And we have the Child and Family Policy Institute of California as a sponsor. Next, we have the California Welfare Directors Association of California, which is the CWDA. And we have Kathy Senderling McDonald, who's here with us today. Thank you, Kathy, for being a sponsor. And I know you're also representing your organization, and also Frank Mecca, who really wanted to be here today, but he was also involved in traveling, so he couldn't be here today. And then next, you'll see our president, Esther Gillies. She's here. She'll be up at the podium shortly after me. And she is a sponsor, and she is at the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. And we have James Kelly, who just arrived. What a surprise. So thank you for being a sponsor, James Kelly. He's a past president of NASW, both local in California and national. And next we have Nancy Lim-Yee, who's going to be our mistress of ceremonies today. And Nancy is the first vice president of NASW California, and she's here today. And then we have as a sponsor Loma Linda University. Thank you for that. And we have sponsorship through the National Association of Social Workers California chapter. And we have Janley Wong here today as their executive director. And he's also a very important member of our committee, as well as is Jim Kelly. Next, we have San Diego State University as a sponsor. And we want to acknowledge Melinda Homan, who's here. Thank you very much, Melinda, in support of Ken. Appreciate that. And we have San Francisco State University. Now, you'll notice almost all the schools of social work are sponsors of this, and we appreciate that. And we have San Jose State University School of Social Work as a sponsor. And Peter Lee is with us today. Peter, where are you? He's here. Just called away momentarily. Okay. And then we have Suzanne Peck, and she's here today, and she is from the USC School of Social Work, and she's also on our committee, a very important member. Thanks for being a sponsor, Susan. And Suzanne also sponsors our videography every year, and we appreciate that. Then we have the UC Berkeley School of Social Work as a sponsor, and we have the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs Department of Social Welfare as a sponsor. And we have the USC Susan Dvorak-Peck School of Social Work also as a sponsor. So thank you for all the sponsors, and let's give them a round of applause. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And of all of you who drove here today, it's really important. Katie wanted me to announce that you need to get one of those blue tickets, because the blue ticket will cut your parking down half price. And we all social workers, we all know how we like things to be half price. So please do that and get yourself a blue ticket. You know, either if you haven't done it already, you can do it as you exit. I think that's true. Okay, so the next person I want to bring out, and the good news is we're all on time so far. The next person I want to bring up is my colleague Esther Gillies, and Esther Gillies is the president of the archives and also a member of this committee. And Esther has been a social worker for 50 years. She's worked in child welfare practice, in policy development and program development, and she's also at the school, the USC School of Social Work. So Esther, please come up here. It's your turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen. And since I'm only 45 years old, I don't know how I have worked for 50 years. I'm here this afternoon to tell you about the California Social Welfare Archives, also known as the CSWA. It's the organization that is responsible for the social work, the California Social Work Hall of Distinction, which is the event that we're here about today. A little bit of our history, since we're very involved in history in this organization. Almost 40 years ago, when I was just a child, an informal group of social workers, very, very active professionally in the 50s and the 1960s at the University of Southern California, became concerned about the legacy of their generation of social workers. They were aging. Retirement was in sight. They were concerned. They posed questions. What if all the advances achieved in social welfare during this prolific time fade away and are forgotten? What if the theories, knowledge, and understanding achieved by our generation are lost to future social workers and social welfare advocates? What can we do to ensure that advances made in our time remain available to inform decisions and planning of future social welfare and social justice legislation, programs, and services? Very powerful questions. But they were social workers. And this small group, led by George Nickel and Francis Lomas Feldman, to name just two, took action. It's what social workers do. You pose a question, you pose a problem, and then you take action. In 1979, they formed the California Social Welfare Archives. At first operating as an informal group, they began collecting and preserving documents and personal histories related to social issues and problems in the field of health and welfare in California. Over time, the CSWA evolved into a statewide nonprofit organization and today operates under the auspices of the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work at USC and is affiliated with the USC Special Collections Library. Our mission remains to collect, preserve, and make accessible documents and personal histories that illuminate the emergence of social issues and problems in health and welfare in California, as well as solutions developed in response to those problems, some that have worked and some that may not have worked, to avoid repetition of something that didn't work. Today, to achieve our mission, the CSWA is active in several areas. We collect documents with historical significance. We preserve those documents at USC, and we make them available to researchers, educators, policymakers, students, and the general public. We conduct oral history interviews with individuals and groups who have made valuable contributions to social welfare in California. This morning we just did an interview with Ken Nakamura, and I think, Ken, it was hours and hours long, wasn't it? We have captured a great deal of information from Ken. But that His interview will be included in our oral history collection and available for viewing for those of you who have long known and have such high regard for Ken. Over 150 interviews, both audio and video, with social workers from across the state are available for viewing on YouTube. This organization started in the 1970s, has kind of kept up pace with technology, but we are on YouTube. And the oral histories can also be viewed on the USC Digital Library. Since its inception in 2002, we have inducted into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction individuals who have made significant and enduring contributions to California social work. Biographies and oral history links can be found on the Hall of Distinction webpage. We also videotape the induction ceremonies and other CSWA events. And you'll notice there is a videographer in the room today. So for the most part, I don't think we'll all be in the videos, but certainly all those making presentations today will be captured on video, and you can watch this at your leisure on YouTube. We post these materials in various places to make them widely available. The websites for our oral histories and videotaped events can be found on the third page of your program. If you count, I don't think you count the cover, but it's the third page. Learn more. It lists all of the things that might appear on YouTube or on some of our web pages, and the addresses are right there for the benefit of your viewing pleasure. And now to this afternoon's program. It's my pleasure to introduce our Mistress of Ceremonies. Nancy Lim-Yee, like so many social workers, is keeping very busy since her retirement as program director of the Chinatown Child Development Center in the San Francisco Department of Public Health. She is first vice president of NASW California and a very active member of our CSWA Hall of Distinction Committee. We're very grateful to Nancy for agreeing to become our Emcee tonight. And so please let's welcome Nancy Lim-Yee.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to add my welcome to the 2017 Hall of Distinction induction ceremony. It is a really great honor for me to be here today, to be your MC, and to be Mistress of Ceremony this afternoon. As your hostess this afternoon, I will be making general introductions, introducing the presenters, and moving the program along during this next hour and a half or so. So we could spend a whole afternoon honoring each of our inductees, but today we have the challenge to show our respect to all 6 of them. For more information on each of them, we've really provided summaries of the biographies of each of our inductees in this commemorative program, so I hope each of you have one. As Esther mentioned earlier, earlier today we actually conducted an interview. Pamela Brown conducted an interview with Ken Nakamura, and in the coming weeks, Reverend Harry Chuck will be conducting an interview with Doreen Der-McLeod, one of our inductees, and NASW will be filming a conversation with Bernice Harper. And these videos will be added to the oral history interview collection that you heard Esther talking about and will be posted on our CSWA and Hall of Distinction websites. So I really invite all of you to, when you have a chance, to view these videos and to learn more about all of the wonderful accomplishments and contributions that these social workers have made. So, the brief comments from the podium are intended to enhance the materials that we have provided. And we have asked each presenter and honoree to limit their remarks to about 5 minutes each. and in my MC role today, I am tasked with being the enforcer on the enforcer on that. So if you see me in your peripheral vision coming your way, much like the orchestra music that you hear at the Academy Awards, please know that it's past your time to wrap up. So, and thank you for your understanding. So, the 2017 inductees into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction have all earned a Master of Social Work, which is a requirement for membership in the hall. And they were nominated by social workers and others working in the area of social welfare from across California. Nominations were reviewed and inductees selected by the Hall of Distinction Committee, composed of social workers from throughout the state, from San Diego to the south to Chico in the north, and representing academia, research, administration, individual and group practice, and all areas across the broad spectrum of social work practice in California. From the many nominations submitted, 6 were selected for induction into the Hall of Distinction this year. So let's begin. As our first presenter tonight, I would like to welcome to the podium my good friend and colleague, Reverend Harry Chuck. Harry was the former youth director and later executive director of Cameron House in San Francisco. As a community activist, he was an early mentor for hundreds of Chinatown youth. Harry was one of the first Asian American religious leaders to speak out for same-sex marriage. He was appointed by 4 separate San Francisco mayors to city commissions, which included the Public Housing Authority and Juvenile Justice Commission. Please welcome Reverend Harry Chuck.
It is really my privilege and honor to present Doreen Der-McLeod as an inductee into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction for the year 2017. I've known Doreen for nearly a half-century. Since her days as a student at the University of California in Berkeley, until her retirement as the executive director of Donaldina Cameron House, a faith-based community service center. Many throughout our community have come to know Doreen because of her lifelong commitment to the people of Chinatown. In a recently published book titled Building Community Chinatown Style, and with a subtitle, A Century of Leadership in San Francisco's Chinatown, the author Gordon Chin describes the key moments of change, socio-economic and political, much needed changes. And these changes would result in the empowerment of an underserved immigrant community, such as the communities that many of you serve in. In his book, Doreen's community involvement is mentioned at least 6 times. Her concerns for children, at-risk youth, the elderly, frequently led her to join in organizing coalitions around community needs. For example, over the span of 2 decades, she served as the co-chairperson of the Better Parks and Recreation Committee of Chinatown, where advocacy meant fighting off developers and pressuring city departments to carry out their responsibilities. We have a common colleague whose name is Reverend Norman Fong, and he recalls how she, in her role as the program director of the Chinatown Neighborhood Improvement Center, how she became involved with community planning, land use, affordable housing, transportation, and alleyway improvements. And these experiences would prepare her for the changes brought about by the sudden influx of immigrants from Asia since the 1960s. Doreen comes from a family of immigrant grandparents and parents. And she's devoted much of her time and energies in working with the elderly, but also with a new generation of social workers who care very deeply for the Chinese elderly located in our community. And many of these elderly folks, frail and vulnerable, reside in what we call single room occupancies. You know about those old buildings where people are crammed into small 8 by 10 rooms and share common kitchens and bathrooms. I know Doreen, who's not one to back away from controversy. She often found herself addressing issues around domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual abuse. Now, every social worker has been there and knows how frustrating and potentially dangerous these situations can become. And there are times when I just simply marveled at her clarity and calm in the midst of controversy. And above all, how she approached each situation with such a depth of compassion. Before retiring, Doreen began archiving thousands and thousands of photos and documents from Donaldina Cameron House, which began as a rescue mission for Chinese and Japanese women nearly 140 years ago. It is said that history is biographical. We're all a part of a unique continuum. And if we dig deeply and far enough, we will learn something of value about ourselves and of our communities. And these are from people and events who preceded us. So when you visit the archives, you can do that on the website of the California Social Work Hall of Distinction. And when we listen to the testimonies of former inductees, we will capture that same spirit of hope, of courage, and innovation. I join many of you. We're very excited to know that Doreen's story will be there among those who have served with this distinction. So on behalf of our community, we are proud to present to you Doreen Der-McLeod to the California Social Work Hall of Distinction as an inductee for the year 2017. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry, for those kind remarks. As my family laughed at the introduction of myself in the book, they said, "Is that you?" It's always great to have family keep you on the level. I am humbled and honored to be receiving this award among the other distinguished honorees today. I want to thank the API Social Work Council for submitting my name. You know, I did not envision myself as a social worker growing up. Heck, I never even knew that social work existed as a career. The professions of Chinese Americans that I knew or saw seemed to revolve around careers such as being a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, an engineer, a chemist maybe, a pharmacist, or accountants. Yes, I know this dates me. Thankfully, this new generation has broadened their perspective to filmmaking, to dancing, to a lot more career options. I first encountered social workers while working at Cameron House, a community center in San Francisco's Chinatown, founded in 1874 by Presbyterian women to provide a safe house or sanctuary and rescue Chinese women brought to this country and sold into prostitution or domestic slavery. Deciding to be a social worker evolved over a 2-year period as I worked there. I have never regretted that decision. What other profession gives one the latitude to work with such a diverse populations as preschoolers, adolescents, elderly, immigrant families, or families with disabled children? What other profession allows one to work in settings from child care centers to schools to hospitals, nonprofits, and other governmental agencies such as Child Welfare, Department of Aging, or even the courts? Social work is not for the faint-hearted. We all go into the field wanting to help people. But one learns very quickly in our work that we will see the worst and the best of people. We will learn that the institutions created to address problems often become the problems as we get mired in the bureaucracy of paperwork, or even worse, when their services are not available or have not been created. Social workers then have to become creative. We have to think out of the box, and we have to become advocates. Challenging as the work may be, the rewards are great, and learning from clients and colleagues continue for a lifetime. As social workers, we witness or are entrusted with the stories of pain, suffering, or obstacles that are beyond our experiences or imagination. We work with clients who continue to undermine themselves and repeat their failures. But we also witness the resilience of the human spirit that overcomes pain, suffering, hurts, and obstacles that have been placed in their path. We learn from our clients that it is possible to survive and thrive if someone will stand alongside them as they struggle, grow, and find their place in society. And to my colleagues, many of who are here that worked with me at Unlock at Cameron House, it is your continuing day-to-day care and compassion of the people that you work with that continues to inspire me. It is your willingness to work for social justice and equality for all that continues to inspire me to continue to be a social worker. Thank you all.
So our next presenter is a colleague of mine on the Hall of Distinction Committee. In fact, she is one of our founding members in 2002. She has served and shaped the social work profession in many, many roles. Among them, she is past president of NASW National, NASW California Chapter, and the International Federation of Social Workers, which represents more than 500,000 social workers in over 80 countries. Currently, she is its first and only ambassador. Sue recently brought national attention to our entire profession and the importance of professionally trained social workers with her generous gift to USC. Please welcome Sue Dworak-Peck, and with her is a surprise guest, Dr. Jim Kelly, also one of our Hall of Distinction Committee members. So please welcome Sue and Dr. Jim Kelly.
Our surprise guest, Dr. Jim Kelly. On behalf of myself and Dr. Jim Kelly, I'd like to introduce an extraordinary social worker who combines clarity of purpose, the highest standards, and determination with the ability to apply a systematic approach to serving greater good. Dr. Bernice Harper. She's a can-do person who represents the strength and caring of social workers, who help others cope with the long-term challenges of the human life cycle. From a family of 12, she was the first out-of-state African-American student to attend the USC Master of Social Work program. She earned her MSW in 1948. She would later go on to earn a Master of Science from Harvard University and her honorary doctorate of laws from Faith Grant College. Starting her career as a medical social worker at Children's Hospital Society Los Angeles, Dr. Harper quickly advanced to a supervisory role, introducing many innovative solutions, such as the family clinic card, to improve client health care experience. She was invited to become coordinator of the home care program at the City of Hope National Medical Center in Duarte, California, later becoming director of its social work department. Dr. Harper was medical advisor to the Healthcare Financing Administration and has represented the U.S. government at several international conferences. To honor her contributions to the U.S. and abroad, Capital Caring established the Dr. Bernice Harper Fund to help social work students in the United States. NASW established the Dr. Bernice Harper Scholarship to provide training in palliative care for social workers in Africa. I could go on for quite a while about all the boards and committees that she served on and continues to serve on, and all the awards that she's received. But it's what Bernice Harper has done for social workers that represents her greatest accomplishments. She has maintained a laser focus on supporting the needs and challenges of caregivers who, day in and day out, struggle alongside their clients and loved ones, easing the pain and finding solutions to everyday hurdles. By supporting the caregivers, she works tirelessly to provide better outcomes for clients. As her NASW Pioneer biography states, Bernice Harper has consistently been referred to as the professional's professional. Dr. Harper has been a staunch proponent and policy developer in the area of long-term care, including hospice care. Her interest and advocacy in the area contributed to her writing Stage 7 Death, the Coping Mechanism of the Health Professional. In dedication, Dr. Harper wrote, "It gives me great pleasure to dedicate this edition to all healthcare professionals and caregivers through the world and to their families as well as significant others who serve the living, the terminally ill, and the dying with love, deep compassion, distinction, and competency." Bernice's achievements, her career, her passion, her life, have captured the attention of policymakers and former presidents. For example, I have a letter received today that illustrates this. Dear Bernice, congratulations on your induction into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction. As you celebrate this important milestone, I hope you will take pride in your accomplishments. Your hard work and dedication to improving the well-being of your fellow citizens serve as a fine example for others. And Laura and I are pleased to join your family and friends in congratulating you on this special occasion. We send our best wishes. George W. Bush. It's with great honor, Bernice, that Jim and I congratulate you, Dr. Bernice Harper, on your induction into the California Social Work Hall of Distinction of 2017. And this indeed is a joint presentation. Jim and I.
She's the bright one.
Don't listen to him. We've talked about today many times, Jim and I, and he was breezing in from Mexico, but he breezed in time, and I'm the one doing the talking. But this is from a joint presentation for you. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Suzanne Dworak-Peck and President Kelly, for that wonderful introduction. Congratulations are also in order for you. You're having the University of Southern California School of Social Work to be named in your honor, as well as you're having received a doctoral degree. Let's give her a round of applause. And let us applaud the President Kelly for getting back here to be here. It is my pleasure to acknowledge a few people in the audience. Ms. Esther Gillies, President of the California Social Welfare Archives. Dr. Colleen, friend, and members of the Social Work Hall of Distinction Committee, and faculty members, Ms. Kathy Johnson, Program Manager. Mr. Robert Arnold, Director of the Social Work NSW Foundation, social work colleagues, Dr. Wong, distinguished honorees, my special guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. I would like for us to bow our heads for a moment of silence for all the people who are suffering in the world, who are suffering from fires and floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, and all of the other human tragedies. Dear Father, feed the hungry, provide water for those who are thirsty, housing for the homeless, resources who are in need. God, you have said that where there are two or more gathered in thy name, that you would answer their prayers. I am that I am that I am, and I thank you. I want to thank each person who has ever contributed anything to my growth and development and professional careers. I will use the remainder of my time to share with you my philosophical frame of reference, which has been the underpinning and the foundation for my life. I believe with all my heart that we are all related, no matter how black, how white, how red, how yellow, how tall, how short, how thin, how portly, and whether you are sick or well, and whether you live on the mountaintop overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, all of the other great bodies of water, such as the Tigris River and the Black Sea. We are all related. And I want to say to you, whether you are homed or homeless, or whether one is sleeping on the grates in our great cities to keep warm, or whether you have to have your belongings in a bag and move from place to place in our great cities, and whether or not you're living in a hut or a shanty, in Africa, Manila, in these great United States, we're all related. Moving fast forward, I believe that we are in the throes of a third world war. We don't want to talk about it. It'll be different from the First World War and the Second World War, and from those who are still fighting the Civil War. The war is going to go on. Moving fast forward, we're going to have a new revolution. It will be the revolution of human caring with ingredients of love, caring, devotion, and compassion. And we're all going to be in this war. It will not be just a single battle somewhere else. It's going forward. And as we are called upon to help soldier, we're going to be soldiers of caring, soldiers of love, soldiers of deep compassion, moving fast forward. I believe that our work is cut out for us. And I want to say to you that I believe that social workers are going to be called upon to help soldier love, caring, and devotion. And I would say to you that it took 3,000 years to bring us to where we are today. I will not be here to see the revolution. Some of you may be, but it's the next thing that has to happen. It has to be human caring. That's the only way to go. And it has to be worldwide. So all the things that are happening in our environment, I believe the world is reshaping itself for the future. And in conclusion, I want to say the social workers are going to be available to assist, to help to make a better world. But not only a better world, but a changed world for human betterment. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wow. Okay, we are very grateful for the participation this afternoon of our next presenter. As Esther mentioned, Dr. Fernando Gil Torres was himself inducted into the Hall of Distinction in 2014. His multifaceted career spans the academic, professional, and policy arenas. He is a professor of social welfare and public policy at UCLA, an adjunct professor of gerontology at USC, and director of the UCLA Center for Policy Research on Aging. He has served as associate dean and acting dean at the UCLA School of Public Affairs, and most recently, chair of the Social Welfare Department. He has written 6 books and over 100 publications. Out of respect for our next inductee, he traveled from Los Angeles to join us today. So please welcome Dr. Torres-Gil.
Thank you. First, congratulations to all the awardees and the contributions you are making to social work and leadership in social work. Before I say a few words about my dear friend and another great leader in the field, and before I call up our friend Jim Kelly again, don't get too relaxed, let me just commend all who have created the archives, created this Hall of Distinction, and given a venue to not just honor, but to remember who has come before us, who has made a difference, and who has shown us how to continue to make a difference. In my classes at UCLA with my social work students, I now require them to each select an honoree, a member of the Hall of Distinction, to go into the archives, look at the interviews, and to draw out from those individuals they have selected how it will inform them as to how they someday will be leaders and possibly members of the Hall of Distinction. The students love doing this. It just creates a whole new arena of possibilities. So thank you to all who have made this possible, and to USC for housing the archives. Jim, please come up. You know, in life, there are individuals who are making a difference, but we don't know that they're making a difference at that moment. And in life, there are persons who have addressed serious social ills and created a path that informs the rest of us how to resolve it. but they're not as visible, nor do we fully recognize that one person made that difference. Rebecca Lopez is that person. Jim's up here because he nominated Rebecca Lopez. I'm up here because Jim was supposed to be on international travel. So I get to do the honors. But both of us were dear friends of Rebecca over many years. And I'm going to ask Jim in a moment just to say a few words as well. But let me just give that overview of how this amazing individual worked in the vineyards, cultivated the fields, and showed us a way. It's wonderful we're here because down the road is this lovely little town called Redwood City. And when we were students 40, 50 years ago, she was always talking about Redwood City. I did not know where Redwood City was. I had no idea that it was on the peninsula. But more than that, I did not fully appreciate that in Redwood City at the time and still today, there are large populations of underserved, vulnerable, exploited populations. In this case, in this beautiful Silicon Valley, there are populations that serve us in low-wage work. There are populations that take care of our children in low-wage work. And it was Rebecca who 40 years ago, growing up in Redwood City, recognized that there's a large Latino population and multicultural populations that were overlooked. She organized them. She brought them together. But she wanted to make a difference. She became close to a legendary member of Congress, Tom Lantos. Rebecca developed her policy skills in diversity and immigration and went on to be one of the chief architects for Congressman Lantos' efforts on immigration reform. From grassroots to treetops, she was making a difference. She went to UC Santa Cruz, and she found another issue that none of us had recognized, that 30, 40 years ago, a large proportion of African American and Hispanic boys and men were being incarcerated and winding up in the judicial system. She was the first to recognize that problem, to work with prisoners at Soledad State Prison in the Salinas Valley, and to address their needs to be able to find meaningful lives and to move away from the stigma of that incarceration. Just a few examples of how quietly, passionately, and with discipline and intelligence showed us this is an issue, this is a problem, this is what we must do. We came to know her at the Haller School at Brandeis University, a wonderful, lovely, fun person, had great parties and fun times with her. She received her PhD. She wound up at Cal State Long Beach. She made tremendous contributions in bringing in diverse population of students, staff, and faculty, became involved in Orange County with the Commission on Civil Rights and Human Rights. Wherever she went, she was making a difference. She retired to come back to her love of Northern California, to return back to Redwood City. Sadly, she passed away suddenly in 2015. We have here today her family from this area. We're going to ask Linda Lopez, her sister, to come up. I had the great honor to meet her siblings, her mother, her extended family. Wave your hands out there. I think you're right there in the corner. This was Rebecca's support system that inspired her, kept her going, and was with her in her last moments. But Rebecca Lopez, a quiet visionary who made a huge difference, gone but certainly not forgotten. Jim, please say a few words as well.
I just want to say that she nearly got me killed. When I got to Brandeis in 1972, and Fernando only stayed a little while because he went to the Department of Labor. And so Rebecca and I are at the A&P supermarket protesting them having grapes that were picked by farmers that were not part of a union. And someone tried to run us over. How did I know that, she was going, she was lovely, she was charming, she was taking me nearly on my death walk. But she was just the most wonderful person who always said to me, friend, if you could only learn to speak Spanish, we'd have such a better time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Fernando, for your words. Jim, I'm so happy to see you. It's been a while. Jim's a longtime family friend of the Lopez's, and what a nice surprise to see you here today. I also want to thank Katie Johnson for helping to guide me through this process. It's been like months to put together, and thank you so much. What a great honor to accept the 2017 California Social Work Hall of Distinction Induction Award for my sister, Dr. Rebecca Lopez. Rebecca's family is present here to support and celebrate, and I know my sister is here, so I'd like to actually name that whole last two rows in the back. Her mother, Rose Lopez, her sister Rosemary, nephews Tony, Joey, Nico, Michael, Andrew, and Alejandro, and her great nephews, Anthony, Andrew, and Mateo. Her other sister Mimi and brother James, one is traveling to Mexico and one is actually house sitting for my sister. So they were not able to attend. Wow, what do you say about someone whose work spans actually about 46 years? I thought about it, and the one thing that kept coming up when I go back, because I was with her throughout many of her journeys, except, of course, when she went to the East Coast to college. But I think the highlight of her 46 years was her ability to empower through education. And she left that legacy of empowerment, whether it was counseling and guiding her nephews, whether it was mentoring new leadership and helping to create vision for communities of color, whether it was advocating with her political allies or educating her political opponents, whether it was mentoring to retain Latinos in higher education and positions of policy making, whether it was mentoring and teaching her students, her beloved students at Long Beach State University. My sister accomplished through collaboration, through coalition building, and supporting other efforts, and continued to set the bar high. And that bar was set high with her nephews, with her family, with her community, and with her students. She truly is deserving of this recognition, and I want to thank you so much for the honor. Thank you.
Our next presenter also traveled many miles to join us this afternoon to express her deep admiration for our next inductee. Pamela Brown is faculty emerita of the Department of Social Work at Humboldt State University. She served at Humboldt from 1989 to 1995, and then later again from 2001 to 2012. We thank Pam for interviewing Ken for us earlier today, and then again for joining us this afternoon. Please welcome Pamela Brown.
We also have a surprise guest. I'm here with Shaunna Oteka McCovey. She's a colleague, a member of the Yurok and Karuk tribes, renowned poet, author, attorney, and advocate. When I asked some people to share a memory or thought of Ken, Shaunna sent in probably one of the most beautiful pieces of poetry I've ever read, and she's published. books of poetry before. So to conclude with our introduction of Ken, our good friend and colleague, Shaunna will read that poem. I first met Ken when I was on the faculty at Humboldt State University. 1 year after I joined the department, Ken was hired as a part-time lecturer, having just moved up from Berkeley with his wife, Jennifer. When Ken walked into my office in 1991 to introduce himself, I felt something special was about to happen. While the department was an interesting combination of talented faculty, there was really no genuine interest in a long, arduous accreditation process or the development of a graduate program. I mention this because I think anyone here who has undertaken an initial accreditation knows it is not fun and especially hard when you want to develop a curriculum grounded in local cultures and concerns and to engage in continuous community involvement from culturally diverse stakeholders. It was with Ken's vision of and commitment to a graduate curriculum that embodied the history and contemporary realities of North Coast tribes that we succeeded. I can't emphasize enough the initial resistance to this, both among our colleagues and non-native social workers. It was possible only with Ken's presence and his commitment. Even with the administrative responsibilities that work on accreditation demands, Ken found time to pursue and develop promising working relationships with tribal staff and indigenous communities. He was learning from their worldview, history, and culture. His belief in the importance of community always frames his perspective and practice. Colleen Friend on the faculty at CSU LA described her experience working with Ken. I was impressed with his curiosity about everything, how things worked, what new approach others might experiment with, what recruitment tools seemed to be promising. Seeing his mind operate was like watching a chess player. He was always thinking 5 moves ahead of the rest of us. Michelle Rayner, Yurok tribal member and faculty at Humboldt, shared this. When I heard of Ken being nominated, I remembered the thoughtful way he approaches his work. I'm not sure it's work. I think it's the way he is. With a long-term vision of inclusion and highlighting the empowerment that exists within communities. He sees places where strengths exist in our communities and notices the gaps, then looks for opportunities to build bridges. This wider vision guides his professional interactions, but are also a part of his conversations over a beer in a local bar or over pasta and wine in a favorite restaurant. This is who Ken is. He understands that for individuals to flourish, it takes healthy, vibrant communities. Ken possesses a limitless patience, and this quality serves him well in building relationships with people that have been betrayed by previous, more superficial attempts at engagement. I recall on numerous occasions when Ken drove for a couple hours for an appointment with someone at one of the local tribes, only to find out they weren't there. This didn't mean he drove back to Arcata, but he waited, not just 15 minutes, but an hour or more, whatever it took. This kind of humble presence is incredibly rare in my experience. Ken knows that trust is never to be taken for granted, but to be built by being present over and over again. Ronnie Swartz, current chair of the Humboldt Department of Social Work, said this, "When I started working at HSU, I tried to be Ken Nakamura. As I've gotten further into my career in higher education, I have learned to be more of myself, but I still try to be Ken Nakamura too. His spirit and being are not bounded by his skin. He lives through multiple people, and he's the closest person to the Bodhisattva I have met." To honor Ken tonight is a gift, since he never seeks this out, and I really think to some extent it embarrasses him. But in honoring Ken, we honor everyone whose life he has affected, including me and Shaunna, and his vision. We honor the value of a not knowing position and a humble way of interfacing with people. I give you Shaunna.
Ken and people in my life, Pam, for example, are what I call the believers in you. So I wrote this coincidentally titled Believers in You. The believers in you teach you to believe in yourself. They look at your entire universe and see something you don't. They do their best to allay the doubter in you, the hurt in you, the lost in you. So you'll recognize the good in you, the able in you, the ocean in you. When the ground is soft, they are the stable foot. While you journey to know yourself, they hold up the mirror. When life undoes you and thrashes your net, they are the sturgeon glue, the sticky, stick-around loyalists, the you-can-do-its, the human band-aids. They come gently to your side to supervise the picking up of pieces, hoping you'll recognize the strength in you, the endure in you, the poet in you. When you have no words, they talk you through it. When all you are is words, they listen. They fill your cup, feed you fish and rice until your belly is warm and full and you are ready to fight the fear in you, the failure in you, the falling back into the deep blue trench in you. When the river becomes the flood, they are the cedar raft. While you learn to understand, they sip coffee under the portico and smile, the ardent devotees, the wholehearted whole hearts, the guides of the eightfold path, who want for only what you want, to realize the love in you.
Come on up, Ken. And I want to say this will be the only time in my 20 plus years that this close friend and colleague of mine will only speak for 5 minutes.
You know, if I was really smart, I would just get off the stage now. I want to thank all of those involved in this nomination and the opportunity to be inducted into this wonderful Hall of Distinction. I'm a small person, not only in stature, but my work isn't interested in the big things that people do. I've just had the pleasure of being with people who care a great deal and to learn from them and work with them. You know, I'm a son of Japanese Americans who farmed in Southern California, a small produce farm. I grew up in Anaheim when it was predominantly white. Post-World War II, growing up at a time when all of my friends in the neighborhood were white. You knew right away that there was something about you that was different, as much as you were friends with people. You knew your household was different. You knew the values within your own house were different. And you, as a child, want to fit in and be a part of everything outside. But when you have love and affection and caring and loving people at home, you come home to a house in which people are interested in what you're learning, what you aspire for, what you want to do. I was lucky enough to do well in school and other kinds of things that bring opportunities. But I think what I learned most from my parents, and I think this is true for many refugees and immigrant families, when you think of the pain and the suffering, the separation from their loved ones, their families, and their efforts to make a life in a new country and to try to raise a family in a world in which they don't understand and fully know what is expected or what is desired. When you see the hardships that they go through, and when you recognize that your life relative to theirs is such of comfort, such of ease, and when you have someone like my mother who would greet me every day after I came home from school and sit down with me and want to know what I was learning, not to tell me what to do or how to do it, but just curious, wanted to know what I was learning and what mattered. When you realize that people's lives that have been so impacted by social and political conditions, that their life was harder, not because of who they were, because of the way they were treated. As a young person, you take it for granted, but when you get older, one of the things you recognize and realize is that it's an enormous ability and capacity in a person to be treated poorly and to grow up raising their children lovingly, to be able to love and to care about the welfare of others when their own conditions were compromised or limited by others. So I think if I were to say any major influence in my life, it is, of course, playing on a farm, digging holes in fields, pouring water in antholes, doing all kinds of things that you shouldn't do. But in it, you learn some things. I'm so grateful for people like Pam and Shaunna, and there's a wonderful group of people that I had the chance to work with and meet when they were younger. They're beautiful and loving, and they continue to keep in touch with me. And I get to see how their lives are evolving and changing. So if I were to say anything about teaching, I would say it's less really about teaching and so much more about listening and learning. And I've had wonderful teachers who are my students, who share their lives with me and who grace me with their kindness and generosity. And I hope, and I trust this about them, that they believe. They believe in themselves. The poetry of Shaunna can express it any better. But I love and see the beauty in them. And I know what they struggle with is to be able to accept that beauty in themselves and to give to others. There's so many people and so many things I'd like to say, but I think I will leave it there, and to thank all of you for your presence and your appreciation of all these wonderful others who are being inducted. Thank you very much.
In keeping with our theme, Dr. Daniel Webster journeyed for several hours from Santa Barbara to participate in the induction of our next honoree. Dr. Webster serves as the current principal investigator for the California Child Welfare Indicators Project, a collaborative venture between UC Berkeley and the California Department of Social Services. The project provides policymakers, child welfare workers, researchers, and the public with direct access to customizable information on California's entire child welfare system. Welcome, Dr. Webster.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm incredibly honored and humbled by those who've spoken today, and I feel very privileged to be able to present my colleague, Dr. Barbara Needell. And so now we get to talk about data, which is something that we do often in our job. After really tremendous presentations and words, really heartfelt. Barbara Needell is my hero. I'm a little verklempt, excuse me. Normally I'm talking about numbers. I don't quite get verklempt when I'm doing that, but Barbara Needell is my hero, and we're here to celebrate the achievements professionally of Barbara and the other inductees today, but I want to take a moment and reflect on the personal qualities that make her the amazing individual that so many of us admire. Anyone who has met Barbara knows that she has a brilliant mind. In fact, there was a statistician who went on to be a researcher at Harvard Medical School who worked on Barbara's project for a time. He once confided in me that he could spend days just working over analyses and going back and forth and double and triple checking things until he was just exhausted. And he'd done the best he could, and he would just, okay, I'm going to send it off to Barbara, and he'd hold his breath because he knew that if she signed off on it, then he'd actually done good work, and that there weren't errors, because if there was an error, Barbara Needell would find it, because she was the ultimate, as he said, quality control. Others of us who had the great privilege of working with Barbara also know that she is just one of a kind. She is authentic. She is hardworking. You can work so hard on something and really pour yourself into it and send it off, be proud of yourself, send it off to her at 2 a.m. But you had better be prepared for comments and questions to come back to you within about 15 minutes. It really doesn't matter what time of day or where Barbara is around the world. The comments would come back. She is a person with the utmost integrity, honesty, will speak truth to power, will not take the convenient way out, but will say what needs to be said. She is trustworthy. You can confide in Barbara, and she will always have your back. She's always shows genuine concern and commitment in helping those around her. She raised two amazing sons who graduated from the Ivy League and from UCLA and have gone on to become great young men in their own right. Those who follow Barbara's adventures on Facebook will be familiar that she and her husband David are world travelers. But what you probably don't know is that in her Renaissance person past, she has been a DJ, she has pumped gas, she has hitchhiked across Europe, and she was a lighting set designer for the original Berkeley Repertory Theater. Professionally, of course, she is very distinguished and has had a sterling career and reputation. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Mills College. She got her MSW and PhD with distinction from Berkeley, and the project that she led for over 2 decades at Berkeley has helped and continues to help the field move in a positive direction. She's had a profound impact on the field as a visionary, as a leader, as a researcher, and as an educator. As a visionary, she recognized early on that social work practitioners really needed to use data to inform their work. Her motto, "Data are your friends," and other mottos as well, really created a sea change in the way that people looked at data. It changed skepticism to enthusiasm, and we've really noticed people starting to use the information to guide their work. She raised professionals' proficiency in using data and helped them to avoid pitfalls and biases that can result from data abuse. As a leader, her skills in forging partnerships between the university and other stakeholders helped to really build the foundation for what is now a statewide outcomes and accountability system. And in fact, the recent focus in our system on using data and information to isolate target areas of interest and collect information and monitor the progress of those intervention is really just a part of an ongoing trajectory of system reform that Barbara was a pioneer of over a decade ago. As a researcher, she's collaborated with others to move the field into important new directions in the areas of data linkages and cross-system analysis. And her work, seminal work on disproportionality and disparity, continues to inform the field in critical discussions surrounding making sure that needed services are targeted appropriately and equitably to those populations most in need. Finally, as an educator, Barbara worked to prepare both those in the field and the next generation of practitioners to be good users of data and to become the leaders, the future leaders who apply that data to making our field better still. Barbara's dedicated great dedication in her tireless service on numerous committees and panels, including her appointment to the statewide Child Welfare Council, and her efforts have won her enormous respect, for which she's received multiple awards, including the very prestigious Peter H. Forsyth Award for Leadership in Public Child Welfare. I began by saying that Barbara Needell is my hero, but I'm just the lucky person who gets to stand in front of you because I represent so many whose lives she has touched, and for whom she continues to be an inspiration. Wow, I got to talk about data, so I'll get rid of this back clip. So, a mentor, an exemplary colleague, and a friend. So thank you, Barbara. I and so many owe you, in the field, owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude for the incredible person that you are and for the amazing work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for those splendid remarks. Thank you to my other nominator, Emmeline Putnam-Hornstein. By their very nature, social work successes are not achieved by individuals, and I accept this recognition with that in mind. The two of you have been the captains of my dream team. Anything I may have accomplished has been because of collaboration and partnership with you and others, so thank you. Let me also thank the role models who wrote letters of support for me, Frank Mecca, Mark Cherna, and Terry Cook. I'm honored that all of these three are or have been public agency leaders. Assisting public child welfare has always been our focus. A few shouts out to everyone who works with Daniel at the California Child Welfare Indicators Project at UC Berkeley, and with Emily at the Children's Data Network at USC. To Greg Rose from CDSS and Kathy Senderling, CWDA, and any other public agency staff that are here. To Susan Smith and the rest of Casey Family Programs. To other colleagues I've had the privilege of working with. To my husband, David Mailer, my co-parent, Dantas Diggs, and to my friends who have shared my life journey. I have survived addiction, self-inflicted poverty, motherhood, and education to get to now. I am truly blessed. It's wonderful that we administrative data nerds will be represented in the Hall of Distinction. Albert Einstein challenged people like us. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. That's what I have tried to do in my work, explain it simply. Someone named Suhail Doshi once said, most of the world will make decisions by either guessing or using their gut. They will be either lucky or wrong. I remember back in the day when social workers resisted data because they hated statistics and they didn't become social workers to do math. And I remember when academia dismissed our work because it was using secondary data and therefore it was not real research. Times have changed. We are now mired in administrative data now, for better or worse. My career-long mantra has been, we have charts and graphs to back us up, so F off. I've been known to have a potty mouth, but there are children here and it's being recorded, so you'll have to fill in the blank. We even have magnets to remind us. I did bring a few spares, so if you don't have one of these and you need it, see me afterwards. Today, administrative data does so much more than back us up. Yes, it validates what we know, but it can also lead the way by showing us patterns we would otherwise miss, and it can help predict outcomes we cannot see from our perches in the middle of it all. The challenge now is to understand what the data can do and, as importantly, what it cannot do. While Deming stated, "In God we trust, all others must bring data," Coase reminded us, "Torture the data, and it'll confess to anything." At its best, administrative data only tells us stuff like who, when, where, how many, how long. To get to why and what to do about it will always require empathy, compassion, and understanding. Social work. To the students here, I beg you to consider jobs either in the public sector or in nonprofit roles that assist these public agency heroes. And to those social workers in private practice serving the population that Courtney and Specht call the worried well, maybe it's time for a career change. The poor, vulnerable, and oppressed need your help. Perhaps now more than ever, as our safety net gets ripped to shreds by a bigoted, mentally ill president and a cowardly Congress. When I travel out of the country, the first thing people from other lands ask me is, "Where are you from?" I always say, "California." It sounds so much better than admitting that I'm a U.S. citizen these days. California Social Work Hall of Distinction, I am proud to join you. Thank you.
For our final presenter of the afternoon is another familiar face in the statewide social work professional landscape. She is the current president of the NASW California chapter, serves on our Hall of Distinction committee, and is the Title IV-E project coordinator, a field consultant, and lecturer at UC Berkeley School of Social Welfare, Kathy Ralph. Kathy?
Thank you, Nancy. Wow. So to bring this day, this afternoon to a close, I have the honor of presenting you with a couple of stories about my ethical hero, Benny Max Parrish. I first heard about Benny Max Parrish when I was a graduate student at Berkeley. One of my teachers told his story in a case that had been solved only a few years before I was in grad school, but it was in the late 60s. Well, I had still been in high school, actually. And this year is the 50th year anniversary of Benny winning his case before the California Supreme Court and making a difference for not only all the citizens of California, but across the United States. And because of his impact, I thought he deserved to be in our Hall of Distinction. Benny was fired from the Alameda County Social Services Agency where I used to work. And when I found out about him in grad school, I didn't know I'd be going to work for the agency that fired him. He was fired for insubordination because he refused an order to do something with his clients. In the 60s, you see, social workers were hired to do more than the child welfare work that they do now. They were hired to do the benefits analysis that sometimes it's called in counties these days, or eligibility work. They not only figured out whether people were eligible for public assistance, they also provided them with social services. They did both jobs. In the 70s, those were separated into two different functions. But Benny was there at a time when they were doing both. And Benny was told, along with his coworkers, in November of 67, that in January of 68, they would need to, they would need to go visit their clients at 6 a.m., randomly assigned clients with a partner. The assigned social worker would go to the front door. The partner would go to the back door. At 6 a.m. on a January morning that this was supposed to begin, you may recall that it's pitch dark. And Benny said, I'm not going to do that. And they said, we need you to do that so that you can determine whether your clients are lying about their eligibility criteria. And he said, on what basis am I going there? These are randomly assigned clients. They are not suspected of doing anything wrong. I think that would be a violation of their constitutional rights. And so I'm learning about this in a law and social welfare class. And so his supervisor actually worked with him over the period of the next few weeks while the social workers were being trained to do fraud investigations on people who we had no reason to suspect were committing fraud. But it was an era, which we are sometimes repeating, that suspects anybody who's receiving public assistance. The poorest of the poor people, this is supposed to be their safety net, and we're going to enter their homes without much permission, kind of coercive permission for those that agreed to accept that. And if they didn't agree to let him in, the social workers were trained that these people would then be referred for fraud, because why wouldn't they let in their social worker unless they were committing fraud? Some kind of circular logic was going on here that was not acceptable. And the more Benny learned about it, the more he insisted to his supervisor that he would not participate in this. And my teacher told me the punchline at the end of the story. I'm going to tell it to you now. His family knows this. Benny was legally blind. He could have gone out at 6 in the morning on a January dark, cold morning and pretended to see nothing or actually seen nothing and kept his job. Okay, but he said no, and he had a young family that he was supporting. So it gives me goosebumps every time I think about this, as I did it the first time I heard it in class, and every time I've told it to my students. He is my ethical hero because he said, that's a violation of my client's rights and I refuse to do it. You can't make me, and you shouldn't make me, and you shouldn't make anyone else do it. Now, other social workers, I'm sure, did it because they didn't all get fired, but he stood up for it. And because he got fired for insubordination, when he went to apply for unemployment, of course, he was not eligible for unemployment either, because if you're fired for what the state would deem a righteous cause, you don't get unemployment. So Benny looked for some attorneys, and he worked with his brother-in-law, who I later learned, and in doing the research to try and figure out what to say and how this story came about, I found out that his brother-in-law was also a blind person who was connected to a blind professor at UC Berkeley who was part of their undergraduate social work education. And this lawyer said, we need to build a case. We can build a case. They put their heads together and figured out the 5 main points that they were going to make in a case that they would take to the California courts to appeal his firing and his ineligibility for unemployment. And they went and they got 2 young attorneys from the ACLU, 2 young attorneys who handled their case pro bono, meaning unpaid. And off they went to challenge this decision. And along the way, they won. First, they were denied in the Alameda court, and then they went on to the California Court of Appeals, and then they went before the California Supreme Court, and they won eventually. It took 3 years or more for this all to come to conclusion, and in the end, Benny was granted back pay for his 3 years of non-payment. And what I later learned from one of his the surviving attorney, who is now a judge in the California Appellate Court, the same court that ruled in their favor, was that Benny offered to share his back pay with the 2 attorneys who had helped him. And he said he was very sorry because of his advanced age. He's no longer traveling down from Sacramento to come here, but he wanted Benny's children to know that he had done that, and that with his $5,000, which was 1/3 of the salary that he had missed out on in 3 years, this judge bought his house in Sacramento, and every time he comes in the door, he thinks of Benny and what a difference he made in his life and in the lives of all these other people. So today we have with us Benny's son, Derek, Benny's daughter, Barbara, Suzanne, sorry, Benny's sister, and Benny's granddaughter. So I would really like to honor them for what their relative brought to us as an ethical hero in the state of California. And because of that action, because that was found illegal to violate clients' rights, that no other county and no other state can do that to their public assistance clients. I hope you're all really proud of him. Suzanne shared with me that her father was a wonderful dad and was called dad by a lot of her friends. Derek has told me so much about his dad. I'm going to let him receive the award and tell you a little bit about him. But this was a wonderful example to me of somebody that should be recognized in our Hall of Distinction and somebody who should be honored for that contribution. He later went on, if you can imagine this, it wasn't enough for him to get dismissed for insubordination. No, he went on to work for Stanislaus County. And there was a Stanislaus County news clipping that we found while we were looking for him for information about him. And in Stanislaus County, he was arrested again for trespassing because after he was dismissed from Alameda, he went to work out there. And he found a family that was homeless and brought them to the social services agency at 4 o'clock one Friday afternoon. And he said, we have to help this family. We have to get them some housing. And the county people kind of moved around and were talking with him. And an hour went by and it was time to close the office. And the family hadn't been helped yet. He wasn't leaving. Neither was the family. And the people in charge stayed around until 8:30 and then said, we have to leave now. We have to close this office. It's 8:30 on a Friday night. We're all leaving. And you have to get out of our building. He said, not until they're helped. So he was arrested for trespassing. And the judge dismissed the charges because he said there isn't a jury in Stanislaus County that will convict him for what we all believe that a social worker is supposed to do and the way he's supposed to be. So I don't think there was an end to how ethical he was. He will always be my ethical hero. There are many others that we heard about today for sure, but that was one I've known about for a long time and didn't want to let it go. Because when I went to find him, I actually found a phone number for him through our Alameda County, because I'm retired from there now. We have an organization, and some guy in the organization helped me find some phone numbers and emails because I traced everything that I could unsuccessfully. And it led to a phone number with Benny's voice on it. That was so lovely to hear. I wish I'd gotten a chance to know him, but sadly he had passed away the year before in 2015, and he had passed away the same year as the other lawyer that had represented him. So they all remember him. The judge who remains says, we talked about him all the time. We didn't know what happened to him, but we're really happy that you guys are going to honor him. So thank you for hearing about him. And Derek, please come up.
First of all, I want to thank Catherine. Thank you very much. I couldn't have said it any better than that. Katie, thank you for getting in touch with us so we could be here for this moment. that is pretty much how he used to do everything. I'll tell you this. I learned at a very young age not to upset him. I knew right from wrong right away. So when I think about my dad, I think about integrity, I think about caring, and I think about ethics. Ethics is like the main thing. And so when I heard this story, when I was younger, it didn't surprise me at all. So, but, he's in a better place now looking down and enjoying this moment, just like everybody in my family is and all of you. I mean, I think he was a revolutionary. When I think of what he did, it changed a lot about, how the state of California does things now. Because I know when I had to go to, every year I got to do this code of ethics thing every year. So I know that had a lot to do with it, where, you pass on the 60s. And I mean, it comes a long way from knocking on somebody's door in Oakland at 6 in the morning. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. But I really appreciate this moment. And I couldn't have said it any better than Catherine said it. Of course, there's a lot more stories, especially in Modesto, California, where, Stanislaus County is and where he did a lot of things, the sit-ins. And that was just one of the things that he did. But yeah, I knew so many people and they knew me, and I was just a little kid. I'm like, who are you? Oh, we just know your dad. And, and so just, I can't express, growing up and just learning about caring, be there for people and just love everybody. Just love one another, help people when they need help. So that's all I can say.
So, as our event today comes to an end, as you can all see from all the presenters, from our inductees, what an inspiring event this is. Every year, from all the different events that I attend, this is one of the most inspiring events, I have to say, that I attend every year. So I like to extend my sincerest thanks to the family and friends of the inductees for sharing in this experience this afternoon. To Colleen Friend, the chair of our committee, thank you so much for your leadership and your passion in this work. And to our CSWA program manager, Katie Johnson, thank you so much for everything. Really. I don't know how many conversations we've had, over the past weeks and months, in really preparing for this event. So Katie, hats off to you, really. Again, really. Yeah. Katie, really, every year, Katie puts in a tremendous amount of work preparing for this event. And thank you to all of you in attendance today for your support for the work that we do. It's really important to us. So thank you for your support, for your attendance today, support for our inductees. On behalf of the CSWA and the Hall of Distinction, I really want to thank everybody again for attending tonight's Hall of Distinction event, and thank you again. Oh, one other thing is to congratulate all the new inductees into the hall. Congratulations.